Welcome back to Rudy's 1/6 World for episode 7 of our Retrospective Showcase series. And in the continuing look back at figures from the Predator franchise, today we're taking a look at the main Super Predator from the Robert Rodriguez produced Predators. And that's a lot of Predators right there. And this is what they're calling the Berserker Predator, which was MMS130, released around 2010. So he's definitely an older release. I did toy with the idea of combining this retrospective review with the Falconer and the Tracker, but this figure really does stand apart from those others, so I do think he warrants some one-on-one time. So let's jump right in and talk about this alien. And it was an interesting take in the movie to essentially sideline the classic Predators we'd come to know and instead be introduced to this new, potentially more aggressive style of villain. And I think they did a good job providing subtle and not so subtle differences to differentiate between the two. So I'll try to point those out as we go. And I do feel like it might have been better if he was hunting on his own, as it would have made him even more intimidating. But I think he still delivered on being that great villain and that great threat to the main characters. So looking at this release, he came with a few accessories, nowhere near as many as the classic Predator, but he did come with that old style oval stand. And then looking more closely at the items included, the first are his blades, and this was one of the key differences with the traditional creature, as he has a single blade on his gauntlet instead of the double extendables that we'd grown accustomed to. And in addition to his single blade, the blade could actually extend out, but it could extend out to multiple lengths, so it almost became a sword. And I do like the almost serrated-like quality of the fully extended blade. He also did come with a shoulder cannon, also different from the original classic design in that it takes on a more cyclical firing rate, almost like a minigun, and the piece does have a rotating barrel. And then he comes with 2 additional fists and interchangeable mandibles to create the open mouth look. The final accessory is pretty gruesome actually, and it's a human spinal column that's still very much gory and clearly hasn't been cleaned from the hunt. To be honest, I think this is supposed to be Stan's skull from the scene where they escape from Nolan's trap and Stan's the convict has his final stand against him, against the Berserker Predator. So it's nicely detailed and sculpted, and the paint used definitely gives it the gore effect from that final stand and that final scene with Stan. Now, let's look at the figure itself and start with the sculpt. And let's look at the helmeted version first, which comes with that very interesting biomask. Now, until this point, we've been used to a metallic element, which is still present here, just with a nice bronze-like finish, showing the pitting and the dents all around, which is really nicely done. And then you have this biological element, which they introduced with the lower mandibles from some creature having been incorporated into the jaw portion of the mask. So I love that in the movie. It immediately sets the character apart. And I think it made Berserker much more intimidating, and it was an interesting way of having the creatures incorporate their trophies into their armor. The other thing I really liked about the biomask were the eyes. Whereas the classic Predator had a pattern almost bee-like, insect-like eye, these are just clear black, which I think creates a more alien appearance, and it's just a little more unnerving than the original. Now, he also does have a light-up feature where the targeting lasers on the biomask do light up a nice red. Now, in my version, the wiring was a little bit wonky, so unfortunately you had to push on the battery port to get the lights to stay on. It looks great, especially in a darker setting, but like most light-up features of old, not something I used much, especially once the figure made its way into the display cabinet. Now, let's look at the unmasked sculpts, which are pretty amazing. And the first thing to note here, unlike the classic Predator where the mask fit on the sculpt via tabs, this one fits on the sculpt just via pressure attachment. So you can actually just remove the helmet with no issue and expose the Predator face below without having to see any of the unsightly tabs that you did with classic. So what we get here is a very different look from the classic. The color pattern is different, and if you look at the crown of his skull, you have a nice red set of sections that really pop. It almost looks like brain tissue is partially exposed. It's definitely different. And then the dreads are also multicolored in that they're not just black, they're black with red. So again, setting the characters apart. And then when you do have the open mouth setup, the mandibles do seem to open farther and longer. And the sculpts, like I mentioned before, look amazing with the wet high gloss paint apps, making him look very reptilian, and the great detailing around the mandibles and the jaws with those awesome paint applications around the teeth. So it's a great job by Hot Toys here, especially for a figure that's at this point 12 years older. old. Now his armor is again a more bronze finish, and it's almost more streamlined than classic, and almost organic, with the armor elements having just some more curvature and some features where it looks like it could almost be an extension of the Predator skeleton. All the way down to the boots too, where the classic had that more sandal-like shoe, this one has a fully armored boot almost. Now, a few things to note on this guy. He does suffer from pleather deterioration, and it's unfortunate because I've had him in a pretty reasonable museum pose in the display, but some of the straps holding his armor together and even around his gauntlet are flaking, and some have already fallen off. It's a shame, and I'm going to need to think of a potential solution, particularly around the shoulder armor, because the straps do hold the armor together, so if they go, I think the armor pieces are just going to fall off, and it's a real shame because it'll also limit posability going forward, out of fear of further damaging him. So I am going to try to pose him up for you here, because I'll be honest, that's one of the big selling points for this guy. He's really a lot of fun to pose. So overall, as we look at some images from the character, the Berserker Predator is, I think, one of the best additions to the collection and to the franchise. He's not the classic Predator in terms of popularity, and I don't think he dethrones that original as one of the favorites. He's still my favorite, but he is definitely a good-looking figure and a great new version of the creature. I do like him a lot more than, say, the City Hunter from Predator 2, who did look a little wacky when he removed his helmet, and I think he's much better than the AVP Preds, who look just like, steroid Preds. The only one that does hold up from those movies to me is the Wolf from AVP Requiem, but I think I like this one a little bit more, just because he was a one-track minded killing machine who had clearly been hunting for some time, and he does end up besting the classic in a pretty decent final fight, although I would have liked it to have gone on a little bit longer. It seemed, dare I say, almost a little too easy. Now, I love the producers and directors of the movies chose to go in a different direction, and I think it was just enough of a push that things didn't come across too extreme. Like looking at the Predator, where the new Super Predator towers over the classic by almost 2 feet. At that point, it's almost comical. Here, it really feels like how the characters in the movie describe it. It's wolves versus dogs. They're clearly similar enough to be related and to have us believe that, yes, a portion of the Predator species developed differently. So I'm very happy to have him in my collection, and hopefully, even with the deterioration, I can keep him around for a bit longer. I know he's not the most popular version of the character, but I personally really like him, and he is without a doubt the best from the Super Predators that were released from this movie. And I think standing with the other figures, be it classic or even the human characters, Royce, Dutch, and Billy, and whatever Predators we might have or might get in the future, he'll stand out as a fairly unique character. And I think the biomask, again, to me is the big selling point. The Unmasked sculpt is great, but I don't think I'd ever display the figure without the mask on. So that's a quick look back at Berserker, and there's more to come, and hopefully someone announces a feral Predator from Prey at some point, because I think that would be another unique version of the creature that would look great alongside these figures. So what do you think about the Super Predator and his introduction into the franchise? Are you a fan, or are you more of a traditionalist? And if you don't like him, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what it was about the Berserker that you didn't like. And I'm always curious to see what other people think about Predators as a movie and how it fits into the franchise. Now, with that said, if you are enjoying the content and are feeling so inclined, please like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll touch base on the next video.